participate electronically in our meetings during this time of crisis. So we are doing that with 3 councillors phoning in. Councillor Juncker, Councillor Ryan, and Councillor Brooks Hill are phoning in. And present today, Councillor Charlotte, Councillor Elliott, and myself. So I just want to ask for adoption of the agenda. Councillor Charlotte, Councillor Elliott, all those in favor? Everybody opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on to adopting the regular council minutes of March 10th, 2020. Is there a mover? Councillor Charlotte, seconder. Councillor Elliott. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Any business arising from the minutes of March 10th? Seeing and hearing none, I'm going to move on to announcements from the mayor. I just want to say to our whole community as well as our councillors that during this time of the pandemic, we're operating with a united front and continue to work in lockstep with all levels of government and healthcare to help slow the spread of COVID-19. We've been instructed by the provincial government to work from the same playbook and to follow the directions of the government and the provincial health officer. We've been given the power to enforce the measures put in place by the provincial health officer to ensure social distancing and to curtail meetings of large groups. We've also been given permission to speed up the adoption of bylaws, to hold council meetings electronically, as well as we are not obligated to have council meetings open to public for protection of all. And just so you're aware, we will continue to live stream our meetings. Please note, it is mandatory that all health orders be followed. Please stay home if at all possible. Remember to practice social distancing, 2 meters or 6 feet apart, and wash your hands. I also want to mention, in the interest of moving business along and with the government edict this morning of adopting bylaws, we're going to ask for adoption of all the bylaws that are in the agenda today as we move through them. And we'll discuss that as we move on. So the first bylaw is A9A. Somebody want to put that on the table, please? Councillor Charlotte.
That the 5-year financial plan 2020 to 2024 bylaw number 2267 receive first, second, and third readings.
Is there a second for that motion? Councillor Elliott. Discussion on the motion. Any discussion from the councillors that are online? Councillor Charlotte or Councillor Elliott, any comments?
So if I understand this correctly, we're looking to adopt, do first, second, third readings and adopt all of these bylaws?
we're going to do the adoption of the bylaws under a separate wording. So
Okay.
Right now, we're just doing first, second, and third reading.
Right.
And then I will ask you for a motion to adopt.
So for the budget this financial plan for the next 5 years, obviously the events of the last few weeks and few months have put a huge wrench into what might happen this year. But it is prudent to go forward with the existing budget and adjust next year through the next year's budgeting process. Is that correct?
I'll ask Ms. McCabe to actually verbally weigh in so the councillors can hear you.
That's correct, Your Worship. Honestly, we don't know what impact this is going to have on the budget at this time. Trying to forecast that impact it's not impossible, and so it is much better to stay the course. And then we will definitely be revisiting when we come around to doing the next 5-year plan, what that impact is, if there's cash savings or potentially more money spent, depending on how we proceed with the costs.
Right. Further to that, then, if we do end up coming to decisions or changes to this financial plan, we would be able to amend that bylaw through the year as we would if anything unexpected came up through spending. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Any further comments?
So just
Go ahead.
on the 5-year plan, we're talking capital expenditures over the next 5 years. Is some significant changes going on right now, and I know we have, what the long-term implications will be for our city. They're going to be pretty significant. You don't want to set a pathway in place that you can't react to. I mean, if $700,000 goes to the building of the city hall, could that be better utilized in another project? I think it's more labor intensive, it might be more beneficial to the town. Or if there's $1 million roof repair or $7 million roof repair to the arena, could it not be better utilized to use that debt for road repair? Those are typical questions I would like to ask. Maybe that creates a plan now while we need it, rather than putting something. We should reallocate. Basically, this would be a normal process for a person if they were facing a serious obstacle to overcome.
Ms. McKay.
Through your worship, the current budget does allow for full employment of all city employees, and so obviously we will do our best when we can to get people back to that full employment status. At this point, while there is a layoff notice in effect, it hasn't actually, we're still paying everybody full-time for that reason. And large capital projects, that's not work that would necessarily be done by city employees. They all actually have very full jobs, and so so road works would be done by a contractor and not by city employees.
Go ahead. Well, let me finish, and Ms. Lowe is going to...
No, that's good thing.
Okay, Ms. Lowe.
The other thing about employees and wages that we have to take into consideration is that we are right now still providing services from the city through essential services. We have to have backup for essential services, and we also have to have employees ready to man an emergency operations center to assist interior health throughout this crisis. So the chances that we'll be calling other employees back to help us do that are big. So I wouldn't start looking at savings with respect to wages at this point.
I mean, I would think this is, like I say, we can't overemphasize the importance of this, but spending on the same path when we're facing such a big unknown seems to be a bit reckless in my perspective.
Well, we're putting these plans into place as according to our budget and all the meetings that we've had. A lot of these are already planned and the money's been put aside and the work's going to carry on. When it carries on will be when we're allowed to move forward as far as the provincial government or provincial health officer mandates, those sorts of things. And then as far as receiving the property taxes and the utilities and that, so we're going to deal with some of that as we move through today. But we're in conversations with the provincial government as to what their plans are going to be. Are they going to push back the property taxes? And so there's a letter that you'll see at the end of our meeting today dealing with rescinding the interest on taxes and that sort of thing. So those sorts of things we're going to move through as the provincial government allows us to. So by putting things in the works today, if we're not able to work, obviously those programs are just going to be held for the time being and we move forward. If we're able to move those forward and get the work done, then we're going to proceed with that. Does that answer any of your concerns?
I mean, personally, I would reevaluate all my expenditures if I had a 6-month downturn in revenue. You go through a major restructure, and I think we should be looking at all aspects of our business or operation completely. As the capital expenditures are one thing, so are our daily operations. How do we maintain, or what do we foresee for the next 2 or 3 months?
So we're still obligated by the provincial government to have our tax plan in place by May 15th, no matter what. And so my suggestion is that we support this moving forward. If we have to alter things as we move forward, following the legislation, we should be able to make those amendments. Am I correct in that, Ms. Lowe, Ms. McKay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, you are correct, Your Worship.
Okay.
I have a question.
Go ahead, Councilor Juncker.
Yeah, just off what Rob's saying, I'm just trying to understand. My impression was that I get what you're saying, but you can't take money that's put into capital reserves to then take out to help fund operations. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying, if we've got capital money set aside or we go after debt for a roof replacement on the arena, maybe we put that into the roads instead. and create jobs, not staff, city staff jobs, but jobs outside. And that's just an option, to consider. How can we create work if we need it?
Well, and that's something that we would have to approach at the time.
Yeah, so to me, putting the commitment to the road to the various other projects and setting in stone seems a bit, I guess.
I think that Councillor Elliott has a valid point, but I would say to Councillor Elliott that we do have to still pass a 5-year capital plan as per provincial legislation, and these projects, I would just maybe say to staff that prior, with the times that we're in right now, let's set aside the project list that we're provincially required to right now, and then, prior to staff, who knows how long this is going to go on for, but prior to staff actually going and maybe tendering some of these things, they could, in the unique circumstances, come to council and just make sure that council is okay with going ahead with that right now. Maybe that's an option.
Ms. McCabe, any comment on
Yeah.
that? Ms. Lowe?
Yes, through your worship, some of the actual capital projects have already started a tendering process, but exactly what Councillor Yonker and Councillor Elliott are saying, we can revisit these as we go along. Until we have our mandate from the provincial legislation, we need to just keep going forward the way we are going forward. But will there be adjustments to the budget? I'm pretty sure there will be. We will also have a loss of income, probably if we start pushing dates and taxes out. So there's a lot to look at. Changing things at this point, I wouldn't advise. Can we after?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I'm not in favor of changing anything. I'm just saying, I support it. I know we have to get it passed. I'm just saying that to kind of compromise maybe. I know that's something that's been tendered, but prior to maybe other large projects that were planned to be tendered in the next couple of months, if staff are considering to still tender them, maybe just give council the heads up so we can make sure that's the direction we want to go. But I totally support passing this for now.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments?
Nicole, did you have this?
Nicole, did you have your hand up? Sorry.
Well, no, just saying the same thing.
Okay.
I support this going forward, and as we need to roll with things, a lot of these projects that are in this is the basic stability of our community and the basic essential services that we all have come to rely on, especially in these times when we're stuck at home, right? We want to make sure the water keeps flowing, the sewers keep flushing, roads don't fall apart in the meantime.
Okay. So, Councillor Elliott.
I think if we follow along with this 5-year plan, it requires a 6% increase for this year. Is that correct?
Correct.
And that's my gist, but I think there's going to be a significantly bigger loss of revenue and income in our community, well beyond 6%. So why would we add that to an additional expense to our community?
Ms. McKay.
Through your worship, the 6% increase does represent about $100 on a $500,000 home, so $100. I think, however, that council would be able to provide people with more support when we start looking at what the potential opportunities are when the province lets us know about property tax payments. And of course, the next one is about the utilities for the businesses. I'm not sure that $100 is going to be enough, and it will have a dramatic impact on the city and its ability to function and potentially help people going down the road. So I think we need to stay the course and then review next year's tax increase potentially and see if it can be reduced.
So you don't think that's going to be tough to swallow for most people in our community that they've gone through this traumatic?
Yeah, but changing the amount of work that would be involved, sorry.
Go ahead.
The amount of work that would be involved to change all of this work we've done to remove that 6% is not worth the benefit that the residents would get. This is kind of my attitude towards the wage subsidies coming from the federal government. They're offering 10% wage subsidies. I'm like, well, that's great, but with 95% loss of income, that's not going to help me. I think we're better off just getting this passed, move forward, and working with the province on ways to help in whether it's deferrals, payments, subsidies, whatever this looks like. It keeps changing every day.
Yep.
But we're going to need help from those senior levels, not from our coffers.
I would think it's all hands on deck, personally. I think, and we have a real opportunity to set the tone and send a message to our community that we're on their side.
Well, I think, Councillor Elliott, we are on your side. We have to maintain business for the city.
But we're increasing their taxes.
Yeah, we were increasing their taxes before this whole thing came forward, and it's the same thing with our payments at home. We've got some increases in some of the utilities, and I'm not talking city utilities. We've got increases in a lot of things in this world, and unfortunately, this is one thing that we need so that we can continue to operate the community, and then we will look at ways that we can help with deferrals and those sorts of things, as Councillor Charlotte has said. So that's my opinion moving forward. So, all right, any further comments? I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? So Councillor Elliott is known to be opposed. The three of you on the phone, are you in favor?
Yeah, I'm in favor. Yeah.
Okay, so note in the minutes that Councillor Elliott is opposed. I'm going to move on, and I'm going to ask for adoption of this financial plan. And so I'm wondering if someone could put that motion on the table. Councillor Charlotte, is there a seconder? One of you on the line?
I'll second it.
Councillor Brooks Hill is seconding it. Any discussion on adoption of this financial plan? I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Sorry?
This is the utility agreement.
No, this is for the financial plan. It's not on your motion. It's, I stated at the beginning, we were going to adopt each motion or each bylaw as we go through. So we would be adopting the financial plan. This is the one that you just opposed. So, are you in opposition? Okay, note that Councillor Elliott is in opposition. Is everyone else in favor? Note that it is passed. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to the utilities. Someone want to put that on? Councillor
If I
Charlotte.
could just actually ask a point of order, maybe Ms. Lowe could offer some insight on this, is how we can, I think we're all just trying to figure out how to vote and make these motions through the telephone.
Right.
With three councillors online. Is there, I guess we're all new to this, some guidance around how to make sure everyone gets their chance?
When we're doing this on the CSRD, so I will ask, is there anyone want to say anything? That'll give you a chance. If you want, just speak up, especially those who are on the line. And then I will ask opposed. And if you're opposed, I expect to hear that.
Right.
Okay? And then we'll go forward.
Okay.
Okay. Does that make it clear for you? If not, be honest, tell me.
Yeah, I'm curious as to the councillors on the phone, how comfortable they feel with feeling heard and being able to voice their votes.
So,
I think it's totally fine. I have no problem with it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's fine.
Michael?
Yeah, it's not ideal, but it's fine.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Your Worship.
Yes, Ms. Lowe.
So, Your Worship, just to let you know that now that we do have permission from the province to move forward with electronic meetings, I would like to probably do them through Zoom, and then we'll YouTube them out to the public so that we can all be see each other and talk to each other. This was just kind of a means to an end today to get this special council meeting carried forward.
Okay.
But this just came down at noon that we can do electronic meetings,
That was.
and it makes everybody.
Yeah, I think that would be much better.
Okay.
I agree.
All right.
We'll do that.
So we're going to go on to 9B, utility billing. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Councillor Elliott?
For the utility billing due date amendment bylaw 2262, we read a first, second, and third time.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Councillor Charlotte? Any discussion on the motion?
I think this is a great thing. I'm glad to see that it comes forward.
Okay. Any,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I know Pat had mentioned this a few times to Gary and staff as well, so I'm glad that staff has found a way to do this. This is a really good way of supporting the businesses and helping them out any way we can.
Great. Any further comments? Councillor Charlotte?
Just that I appreciate that it's getting split into two payments, so it's not going to be just doubling up later on.
Yep.
This is still trying to spread that burden out a little bit for us poor souls.
Yeah, we're all in that boat.
Yeah.
Is this, I have a question, is this gonna be permanent or is this just for this tax season?
So just for this tax season? For this year?
Sorry, through yours, just for this quarter of this, second quarter of 2020.
Just for the second quarter of 2020.
Okay,
That clear?
okay,
Okay,
yeah.
all right. Okay, I'm going to ask the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, I'm going to say this is passed. I'm going to actually go on and ask for someone to put a motion on to adopt this bylaw. Councillor Charlotte, their seconder, Councillor Elliott. Any further discussion on adopting the utility billing due date amendment bylaw? All those in favor? Opposed? I declare the motion carried. Moving on to 9C. Someone want to put this on the table? Councillor Charlotte?
The Revenue of Anticipation Borrowing Bylaw number 2269 be given first, second, and third readings.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Elliott. Ms. McCabe, would you just give us a brief outline of this so that the public who are listening live streaming can actually hear what this is?
Sure. This is a bylaw that allows the city to use short-term borrowing, big temporary borrowing to cover shortfalls in cash flow for regular lawful expenditures of the city. So this is our operating expenditures only. And so it allows us to use the operating line of credit we have set up with the credit union, which is $3 million. And so this will help us when it comes time to looking at what options we can offer to people for property taxes and future payments and things like that. Just helps manage the cash flow.
Perfect. Any questions or further discussion, Councillor Elliott?
Do you anticipate, is it going to be that short on our cash situation?
It's possible, yes.
And how do you see, like, is that from payroll or?
We still have expenditures going out on a regular basis. The monthly expenditures, the payroll, which at this point I'm assuming is, other than a short blip of where we won't have some people working, will still be full. And then we also have third party, like if we collect taxes by July 2nd, we have to make remittances out to the third parties, like the province and things like that. So I'm managing the cash flow, and so we may need this. There's also some, we may need this. So it's just nice to have.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor.
Ms. McCabe, I was going through the financial statements of the city, and I saw that we have approximately 13% or $3 million with MFA right now in intermediate bonds.
Yes.
I'm just curious, in order to kind of protect the city's money, the taxpayers' dollars, I was reading online last night that a lot of wealth and advisor groups that cities invest the money with, they're saying that we should put them into T-bills because they're predicting if an economic crash comes, then the only people that actually can produce liquid cash is the federal government. So I'm curious if we're going to do that. And then I'm also curious because if we do have $3 million in intermediate bonds, if we move those to T-bills, wouldn't it make more sense at a lower interest rate to use that cash from T-bills that we could have instantly rather than accessing a 2.95% line of credit?
Yeah, you're correct on both points. I'm looking at the first one and the second one. This is in addition to using those funds as well. The
So
borrowing.
on top of
Yes.
using the $3 million from MFA, would you then, as Director of Finance, so most likely hatch that from T-bills first before we borrow from the line of credit?
Definitely.
Okay, awesome, thank you.
Any further discussion on motion 9C, revenue anticipating? Go ahead, Councillor Elliott.
And just on the timing, the tax deadline is the end of June?
July 2nd.
July 2nd. So this tie over would carry from, say, April to June for the cash need?
I'm anticipating at the moment, this is being put in as a stopgap measure in case we need it. I'm not saying the city needs it at this point, but it will depend on what the province decides to do with the tax due date. If the property tax due date is changed to a later date, it will impact the cities because we're still paying for our expenses, we're still paying our employees. So I need to make sure I have the cash flow available to keep that part of it running.
Is it,
Hey,
Councillor Ryan, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just to clarify, so this is just because of the deferred taxes, because that's like the $3 million intermediate bonds and then another $3 million line of credit, $6 million, which is like a quarter of the budget, just to absorb the delay in taxes, is that what I'm hearing?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, because at that same point though, like, even though there's still costs for sure, I understand that, but surely there will be some kind of reduction in our expenses because we wouldn't have to maintain certain buildings that are open, or not maintain, but like, staff them. So there should be some reduction in wages, is there not?
There is some reduction, but most staff are still are still working. So it's not significant enough to make up this difference. And we may not need this line of credit or to go into it. This is just an anticipation if we do need it. It will only be used if we absolutely need it.
Okay, yeah, I think it seems conservative and prudent to get it just in case we need it. But I also would hope that the city's doing everything they can to reduce costs in this time when, we are not offering taxpayers all the services that they pay for.
Well, that's exactly what we're doing, Councillor, is we're doing whatever we can to mitigate our expenses and move the community forward under this time. Having this in place just provides that cushion for us to make sure that we won't run out of funds to meet our obligations should the provincial government or the federal government decide to move the tax deadline back.
Right, okay, thanks.
Can I ask another question, or?
Yes, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry, just clarifying as well, is Mr. Case decided that we did need to access the intermediate bonds if we put them to T-bills, which I hope we do, or vice versa, the line of credit. Would that decision come to council prior to doing that?
No, that's operations and they'll deal with it.
Okay, and so I do think this is a good job though to be prepared. My other question too, just about revenue, and because this is related to taxes, I'm trying to, as for the late fee on property taxes, is that something that we have the power to temporarily suspend the late fee on taxes? I'm hearing both things from across the board that we do have the power to reduce the late fee and we don't. I'm just curious from Ms. Lowe.
She's nodding her head no. Ms.
Your
Lo-
Worship, I'll let Tanya actually answer that.
Okay, Ms. McCabe.
Through Your Worship, the penalty, the 10% penalty, is established by provincial law and provincial regulations. So we do not have the ability to reduce the percentage.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I'm just following up on that then. Is that something, Your Worship, that I know you've been talking to the province about many things in property taxes. Could you put that down possibly as something to speak to the province about as well?
Yeah, we actually discussed that in a phone call at noon today, so the minister is taking that into consideration.
Awesome, thank you.
You're welcome. Any further discussion on the anticipation in borrowing bylaw? Councillor Elliott.
So on the costs, the ongoing costs that the city is incurring, the variable elements or the stuff that's not necessary, do you have any idea what proportion of our monthly expenses is tied to work? Because if our employees are not there, our expenses should be significantly less.
Unfortunately, through Your Worship, we're still maintaining the buildings, we still have to heat them, we still have to light them. People that are still working in public works are still driving their vehicles. So having people at home, working from home, which is what a lot of them are doing or not working, is the savings from that are not, from operating the facilities, are not significant.
So,
I'm confused, why are we keeping a building we're not using it?
Because some of us are actually still working from the offices.
I have to maintain them.
We have to maintain all the quality of the buildings and shutting off all the heat and things to some of these bigger buildings. If we were to need anything for emergency services, we need to have them operational in a heartbeat. We can't go and say, hey, we'll be ready for you in 24 hours. Ms. Lowe, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, further to that, Your Worship, we have been asked by the ministry to put together a list of resources for interior health. So we will be putting our buildings forward to assist interior health if need be. So we have to have our buildings in operational order.
Is that clear to everyone?
so just curious though, have we not given sort of a 2-week leave or a period, and then what's following that for most of our staff? Is that what I've got?
Well, it'll be dependent on what the provincial government and the provincial health officer mandates. If she comes back to us and says, we need an extended period of time for people to stay home, we'll be obligated to carry out those regulations.
So is it a temporary leave that we've sort of issued, or how's that work for?
Ms. Lowe?
Through your worship, we sent home anybody who was not being employed in essential services for 2 weeks with pay to give them time to get their EI in order, and they will be laid off effective April 1st if they are not called back. So again, we're waiting for the provincial health officer. There is a lot of services that the city, a local government, has to provide that are essential services. For instance, bylaw enforcement. They have told us today that we need to start bringing back our bylaw enforcement because they are giving them the ability to enforce some of the public health officers' regulations. There's a few other things. So water, sewer, roads, garbage. You have to have, we're staggering the shifts right now so people aren't working together all the time. And so if someone does get sick, we have the availability of calling somebody back on. So they're not laid off. They are still essential services. They still are being employed by the city.
Yeah, I'm not contesting the essential elements. I'm just
It's actually quite a bit of what the city provides as essential service.
yeah. Like when the pool is shut down.
That's just lifeguards.
Or, I mean, I just think the city, any normal operation would be paring down as best they can.
And we have.
And that's what I'm.
We've
We're
gone
operating on
down.
the skeletons crew right now. So.
And still, do your best to get the employees working when they can, but
Absolutely.
yeah, but we're trying to keep our head above water here, and
Well, and I would compare the city more to a grocery store than to a store like mine.
yeah.
I'm not essential services. I can shut down and pare right down some core staff. Cody, on the other hand, I could imagine can share some stories of how full out they're going. So for those essential services, it's more work than it was before.
And fair enough. I'm not debating that. I'm just saying where we can, let's make those calls.
And we have. Okay, any further comments on the anticipation word bylaw? I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? I deem this to be carried. Now I'm going to ask for someone to put on a motion to adopt this motion. Councillor Sherlett, seconder. Councillor Elliott. Any discussion on adopting the revenue anticipation bylaw? All those in favor? Opposed? I deem this motion passed. Going to move on to development services. The zoning amendment bylaw. Someone want to put that on the motion? On the table. Councillor Elliott?
The zoning amendment bylaw number 2261 be read for the first and second time.
Is there a seconder for that motion? Any discussion on the motion? That's basically allowing to have a cafe status in the industrial park area. That's what we're asking for. Councillor Sherlock.
Sounds like this was coming forward before all of the hoopla happened.
Yeah, it's been
It seems like a nice light topic, but it's a whole bunch of heavy stuff, so no, sounds great.
Okay. Any further comment on that? Now we're just reading it. Go ahead.
We don't have a ton of industrial land. I guess it's pretty large, but I'm just worried. I'm not really worried. I'm just curious if there's any concern that with adding this type of use, it could sort of change the, I don't know, like what other developments go in that zone. I mean, I guess we're not going to have like 10 cafes lining up together, but
No,
we
this
just
is-
want to make sure that that land gets reserved for industrial use, right?
Yeah, and so the idea of putting this in is to actually have a little place for people to have coffee or eat in the industrial zone, so that they don't have to go downtown if they don't need to. So
Yeah, that makes sense.
there's a couple areas in the community that that may be. Any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. We just did first and second reading, so we are not going to, is it? Count our Ms. Law.
Through your worship, first and second reading for this type of a bylaw amendment will need a public hearing, so we will have to research what that looks like with respect to the regulations. And we didn't want to set a public hearing at this time.
Perfect. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Did I call all in favor? Yes, I did. Okay, we're moving on to staff reports. 11A. Someone want to put that motion on the table? Model of discussion. Councilor Elliott?
That all future regular council meetings be postponed, and that the chair will call for special meetings as appropriate.
Is there a second for that motion? Councilor Charlotte. I just want to start off, we have done this, first of all, because a lot of our staff is going to be working, if we have to upgrade the EOC, they'll be in there and they won't be able to do a lot of their regular work, so we may not have things coming to council. And this way, by doing it here, we can just call the meetings as appropriate. Is there anything else that you wanted to add, Ms. Lowe, before I ask other councilors for comment?
Your worship, this was set up to allow us to be able to have special meetings because according to our procedure bylaw, we weren't allowed to do any type of electronic meeting unless it was special. So the regular meetings weren't set up to be able to be held as electronic. Now we do have an order from the minister that is allowing us to have electronic meetings for special meetings as well as regular. So this will just give us the ability to not have to come to council to change everything each time and allow for us to hold special meetings as need be, as business comes up for the time being. And it has to be done by a resolution because at the end of every year, we set the calendars for the next year and it's done by council resolution. So by postponing the meetings for a while, we can just set up special meetings as we need them, as required. And then we can come back to council when things are settled again and resume our regular calendars.
Okay.
So I'll comment on that. I don't support this motion now that we can do meetings electronically. I think that's what we should do. I think we still have work to do and there's still some work that's being done by home or by office. So, yeah, I think we should just keep going. That's what the taxpayers are looking to us to do, is to lead at this time and keep working on all the stuff they pay us for.
Okay, that's noted. Again, I will make comment that if we have our staff tied up in the Emergency Operations Center, they will not be doing any work from home. They will be in there managing the emergency as we move forward, and this was to mitigate that. Any further discussion on this motion that's on the table?
Yeah, I have a question.
Go ahead.
So to the mayor's point then, if they're tied up in the EOC, but they're not currently right now, I know Ms. Lowe mentioned that she has been half day. If you're wanting to move this to special meetings, then are you committing to still having a special council meeting at least every 2 weeks then?
That's definitely my intention, Councillor Juncker, is to continue with the meetings every 2 weeks. And what will be on there will be dependent upon the emergency situation that we're in at that time.
But it sounds like we don't need them to be special meetings anymore. Am I not understanding that correctly?
Well, we call them special meetings because then we can have them on a day that's different than the regular Tuesday at 3 p.m. And
Okay, I see.
okay, Councillor Elliott.
I wonder if it's, while we're going through this period here, would be more value to meet weekly. Just if we can all call in, it seems like a no-brainer. We can do it a lot more efficiently.
Well, that's something that we can do. I guess the concern from my perspective is what is the ability for staff to do that. If you want us to call in and then we explain to you what we've been dealing with weekly versus us going out once a week or twice a week with a video and explaining what's happening. If you want to do it that way, then potentially we could do it that way. But I just need to know the capacity. So I'm going to go to Ms. Lowe. What's the capacity of our staff to be able to do that if we need be?
Your Worship, I would suggest that we take a wait and see at this time.
Okay.
It looks like we are going to be activating. So
Okay.
things are changing hourly, daily, and we just need to be ready to assist into your health in this, if it becomes an emergency. So if we can set the council meetings at a resolution so that we can do them as special meetings, we may have 1 or 2 a week when things get going. So I wouldn't want to commit to something at this moment.
Well, that's
But if we keep our regularly scheduled meetings, then we can still have special council meetings if they're required. But then it just keeps some level of consistency with our sort of like non-COVID agenda.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the ability of staff to get the work done if they're tied up in the EOC. So if
Yeah, but that's an if, and if they're tied up, then we have.
well, I can tell you it's pretty likely that we're going to activate the EOC from what we're hearing from the government, or activate it at a higher level here in the next few days. So all I'm saying is this just gives us the opportunity to be flexible with the meeting. If you want to vote this down and still have the meetings every 2 weeks, then we will have to look at the meeting prior to see if we have anything to put on the agenda to have the meeting or cancel it. This way just gives us the opportunity to call a special meeting if we have things that we need to deal with. Whether
Okay,
it,
but just to clarify, like if the EOC gets activated, then that's not every single staff member. Surely some people are still working on city-related tasks, right?
actually, it's almost every director that we have. It is every director that we have. That will be in the EOC. They've been trained to do that, so they will have to fulfill the roles and all that. So the managers,
Nothing happens that's non-essential. Everything just screeches to a halt, even if
Well-
somebody's working from home.
yeah, absolutely. The emergency trumps everything.
So for my clarity, what happens in a next level up in the emergency response?
I'm going to go to Ms. Lowe with that. Where are we at with the levels? We're on level 2 now. There is 3 levels. When we're on level 3, we're now in an emergency. But in the meantime, Ms. Lowe, what are we doing?
Your Worship, right now we are in a level 2, so we're gathering agencies and putting together a consulting group and assigning responsibilities to each person as to what that looks like. The province has asked us to put together a list of our resources on what we would be able to offer out with respect to our buildings, manning our buildings for testing and self-isolation. This all just came through today. So we have to walk in unison with the provincial government, and we will do as they tell us. And we have to have our buildings and our resources available 100% to the province if we go into a pandemic crisis in the city of Routstone. That's it.
Well, I guess I'm just saying, what does that mean? So we just get the rec center as an isolation building, or?
That won't be the only building.
No, I said, no, I just, what does it mean? Do we have to staff them, or do we get the emergency medical teams to staff them?
Well, it depends on the criteria from the provincial health officer when this goes
Yeah,
out.
so they will have a blitz of information that goes out and say, so we just sort of fill in where we're needed.
No, we actually manage everything.
Yeah, we manage it and plan it, and we would source out things like beds, blankets. We have to make sure that the food is being distributed to those less fortunate. We have to protect the vulnerable. There's a lot of different levels that the city has to step in and assist into your health.
Okay, any further discussion on why we do?
Yeah, so if all the directors are working on EOC, then is there anybody, or would anybody be responsible for bringing materials forward to council? Or, like, would Ms. Lowe be able to do that, or she's also, I'm assuming, part of the EOC?
She is part of the EOC, but I'll let her weigh in.
Through your worship, actually, Councillor Ryan, I'm the director for the EOC, so all of my resourcing would be put into the EOC. but I would also be putting together whatever we need to bring forward to council to keep council in the loop, council informed, and council making decisions. So it won't be on a regular basis. It would be, I might have to call a meeting in the afternoon, you know, tomorrow afternoon, say, in 24 hours, and put us together a meeting that we would do on a Zoom to make decisions quickly, and that's why the province has given us the ability to quickly make decisions.
And I think, so to do a special meeting, you need 24 hours notice, is that correct?
That's correct.
So I mean, from my perspective, I think I'd prefer to meet weekly. If we can just do it on Zoom with a phone call when we're down
It
in.
might be more than that. It might be more than that.
Yeah, I say we have the opportunity to do it, why, you know.
It will be included in the decision.
And that's why we're calling it a special council meeting, and we can adopt and we can put together the meetings as we deem suitable,
Yeah.
rather than just having, okay, every 2 weeks we know we're going to meet. So this may last for a month, it may last for 2 months, or we might be done in a couple of weeks. We don't know. Ms. Lowe, you had your hand up.
Through your worship, if it's any consolation, there are many other municipalities doing this right now.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
I'm curious, what's the communication piece look like? Like, if we change the schedule of meetings for those that do follow us regularly every 2 weeks, how are they going to be kept in the loop if we sort of schedule these special meetings twice a week or whenever they're needed?
We have to advertise publicly, so the website, and if anybody is signed up to the Notify Me, they will be notified of any meetings that come forward. That's why we have the 24 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. Lots of people are signing up, so that's a really good thing.
Awesome.
Councilor Gillette, did you have a question? or something?
No, just that I've signed up for all the alerts on email just so I know what they look like, and yeah, lots of great information, easy to follow links. Works well. So if anybody's curious or wants to stay in the loop, they should be signing up for the alerts.
Yep.
It's been something I've been harping on for years, that communication is a two-way street. At least now everyone's paying attention.
Okay, any further comment on the special council meetings? I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Opposed? I deem this motion carried. Moving on to item 11B. Councillor Elliott, would you read this, please?
That Councillor Gillette be appointed as acting mayor for 3 months.
Is there a seconder for the motion? Anyone else online that would like to second this motion?
Sure.
Second it.
Okay, Councillor Ryan spoke up first, seconding the motion. This was brought to my attention from the corporate officer in the last day or two. People are concerned that I might get sick, and that's a prudent concern. So having someone in place for 3 months for consistency, and if we need to extend this, we would change to one of the other councillors for another 3 months should something happen to me. So, Ms. Lowe, do you want to weigh in any further than that?
Your Worship, this is also another resolution that many municipalities are doing in the wake of the COVID, and it is to consider the continuity of business in case you do get sick. So appointing an acting for 3 months just gives us that continuity, and it may be that we actually extend Councillor Shirley's acting mayor for 3 more months.
Okay.
If something happens to Councillor Shirley, then we will be looking to assign somebody else to the acting mayor.
Okay.
Don't we already have a schedule of people who are appointing mayors at every month during the year? Like, why aren't we just using that schedule?
Ms.
Yes,
Lowe?
through your worship, that's correct. We do have that, and it goes every 2 months. I was just looking for extra consistency at this time.
Okay.
Any concerns, any other questions? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 11C, the grant, Emergency Operations Center grant. Councillor Gillette.
The submission of an application to UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund, Emergency Operations Center and Training Stream for $14,674.05 be approved.
Seconder for the motion, Councillor Elliott. Discussion on the motion. This is getting some funds from UBCM, Preparedness Fund for our Emergency Operations Center and for the training. And definitely we've been doing some upgrades to things in the EOC, so I think this is appropriate time for this money. Any further discussion on this motion? All those in favor? Opposed? Motion's carried. Moving on to correspondence, item 12A. This is from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. And some of the things that we've already been talking about, they're asking us to support with the provincial government, waive all interest and penalties for unpaid property tax installments for a minimum of 60 days, waive all interest and penalties for unpaid water and wastewater billings for a minimum period of 60 days, and call on the provincial government to expand the property tax deferral program to provide immediate relief for small businesses and nonprofits. So at this point, I think we're supportive of all those things, but is there any councillors that want to make statements or comments on this? Councillor Elliott.
I think Councillor Yonker mentioned about the penalty as well. I don't know why they haven't added that part to it, but...
Well, we've been in conversation, without being in conversation with the independent business people, we've been in conversation with the provincial government directly, and as mayors throughout the province, most of us have asked for that. So they are looking at that, and they stated that in today's telephone conversation, that they are looking at getting rid of that property tax interest rate.
Just a comment as well on that I've been really impressed with the information coming out from our local Chamber of Commerce in partnership with the BC Chamber of Commerce, trying to get all that information out and bring clarity to the businesses for these supports that are coming from our provincial and federal governments. It seems to be changing on a daily basis. Clarity is coming after the announcements, so it's great having that support from a local organization so that we can try and deal with this as best we can. The communication coming out of tourism as well has been very clear. We're in this together. This is going to hurt a lot of long-time family businesses in this town. And I really hope that as we get through this on the other side, we can come out of it together and support all of these amazing entrepreneurs in town right now that are just terrified.
Yeah,
So,
I think we're all in that.
yeah, we
We're all
will
in
get
that
through
terrified
this.
boat. We're all concerned about what's going to happen, not just for the future, but what's happening at present.
Yeah.
I look around the community and it really is unprecedented to see what's happening, and so we're all concerned moving forward.
Just further to that, I think I just got a note from one of the property management company in town. He's circulating a letter to the various renters in our community that said there is some money available, but the timing is not likely to arrive for the 1st of April.
Yeah.
So those landlords or potential homeowners who are renting out space are going to bear the brunt of that. So it's going to affect everyone down the line, not just business, residential owners, all the way along.
Yeah, it's going to be a big...
There isn't anyone in this community that's not affected by what's happening.
100%.
Okay, any further comments on this, Councillor Yonker?
Oh, yeah. I wanted to ask another question, but it's unrelated to that, but we were supposed to have like the 15-minute prior conversation before the council, and that didn't happen. Are we staying on after the council meeting? I just want to
Yes, I would like you to stay on if you can, please.
Okay, thanks.
All right. So we have nothing further on our agenda, so I'm going to ask for termination of the meeting. Nobody wants to go home. Councillor Charlotte, seconder for the motion. Councillor Elliott. All those in favor, motion's carried. We are finished our meeting.